We finally made it to the 90s. Drop mixing is simply making sure that you're lining up the drops of a song so they come in at the same time and doing your transition during the build. So I've got, on this next track, I know I've got 16 bars before the big breakdown. And the breakdown is not exactly a drop, but it's a really, really big synth breakdown. So I know I've got, right now, a 24 bar build. So I'm going to count 8. 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just going to bring in the next track slowly, because the next track is kind of building up. In fact, I'm going to use a filter. I added a little echo on there just to like snazz it up a little bit. That's just a drop mix right there. It's actually just knowing when you're bringing in the track and then planning to do an entire transition between two builds that are happening on the same song at the same time. When something big happens on your new track, you're bringing it where something big was going to happen on the old track. But instead of hearing the old track, you hear the new track. Yeah.
What's the easiest way to like count how many measures?
Let's take a look at this song that I said, and I listened to the song and I tried to find the drop. Okay, all right. So right there, I know I got a drop. So what I can do is I can set this to how many bars I want and just go back. I just jump back 16 bars right there. I actually like to use this 16 beats, which is also 4 bars, and I just counted 4 bars, 8 bars, 12 bars, 16 bars, and I just put my hot cues there. Saves me so much time. Plus, you can also map that to your keyboard again, so I just use left and right. That's a super fast way to count. Some of your controllers have a beat jump, basically exactly the same thing. So right now I've got a 2-bar beat jump, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So if I went to hot cue E, right there, and I beat jumped 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I'm right back at the beginning of the song.
So you like hear the beat, the drop over your headphones, and you're like, oh, I want to mix this here, and then you go back.
Yeah, and you go back. And then, but then you also know that the song that you're playing out, you need to know how long those builds are. Another good reason, just go in and analyze your music. You can see I wrote over there F 24 bar build. So I know, okay, well, that's 8 bars longer than I need it to be. So I can count off that first 8 bars, and then everything lines up nicely. Very, very, very popular for EDM in particular, because you have drops in EDM. But you can also use it with any genre of music that has drops. Dubstep works really, really well. And now we're going to shift to Italo house. This is actually kind of like Italian deep house. It's a little bit lower energy, a little bit more, I don't know, suave. A lot more, they also really like pianos a lot more. Okay, so let's see. See, they like pianos. I want to talk a little bit about using loops. Say at the beginning of this next song that I'm bringing in, I know I've got 4 bars over there where it's nothing but beats. And that's because I analyzed it ahead of time. I'm right at the beginning of the song. So what I can do is I can just turn on a loop. I can turn on a 4-bar loop. Now in some of y'all, you have a button that just automatically turns on a 4-beat loop. And then what you can do is you can double that. So double 4 beats or 1 bar into 2 bars, then double that into 4 bars, and double that into 8 or into 16. And I actually have a button like that. So if I just hit the loop button, it gives me a 4-bar loop. And then what I can do is I can use the Q loop buttons. They're marked half x or 2x. Multiply it by half or multiply it by 2. Okay, so you can see over here it's telling me how much is going to get looped. And if I only want 4 bars, I'm just looping from D to A, and now I can just hit start. Oops. And this is the new track I'm bringing. And it's just going to go back automatically. So now I have all the time in the world to bring in this new track, at least until the first track runs out. But I can also loop the first track. I'm going to give myself an 8-bar loop. And now I have infinite time to bring in my next track. So if you feel like you need a little bit more time and you don't want to worry about running out of music, you don't want to worry about, is the vocal going to come in, you can just use loops. So say I'm about ready to let the previous track retire. I just hit exit. And the new track is now just playing the track normally. I know I've got about 8 bars left. I can actually make the loop shorter. Now I'm just looping that 1 bar over and over again. If I just want to make something like really dramatic, there's a particular kind of a loop which is called a roll, and all it's doing is sampling a certain amount of time and then just repeating it over and over again while the song actually plays underneath it. That's a roll. It's actually just a very short loop. In this particular case, it's a one beat roll. I'm using pad effects, which a lot of your controllers have. You need to go into this little gear icon and choose what kind of effects you want to have when you push a button. In this case, I have 4 rolls and I have 4 slip rolls. Each one of these rolls is set to a different tempo. 1 beat, half a beat, quarter beat, 1/8 of a beat. And you asked about wetness earlier. They're all 50% wetness. So it's another way to sort of like mess up with the music and put your own stamp on it, right? And you can get silly. I'm going to stop this so it's not distracting. So that's just me using different roll tempos. One beat, half beat, quarter beat. 1/8 is kind of not really a beat anymore. But quarter beat works. If you noticed, it just repeated whatever that original sample was. Right? Okay, wait, just one sec. Slip roll is very similar, but every time you press slip roll, it's going to pick up a new sample. So I'm going to do the same thing. So every time I touched it, it picked up a new sample from whatever the underlying song was. It's not repeating the same thing. This is a roll. This is slip roll. It's a bit different. Okay. All right, question.
Yeah, so for the roll, like, what section of the, so like, when you're, I guess, the track's going by,
right?
You press roll, like, is it the beat of the chord, the note that it's sampled, or the beat like after?
I think it's after, but let's. Yeah, it's after. It's after. Good question. Never thought about it. I'm guessing slip roll does that too. It samples the thing that's right after. Now, of course, you can do that with a loop as well. You can do that. The only difference when you use loop is that the song doesn't keep playing underneath it. The song is stuck to wherever you have it looping. That's great if the whole point of you doing that is to make a song longer. But when you're using roll or slip roll, then the original track just continues playing underneath it. Now, you don't have to use pad effects to do that. A lot of you have an effect strip. There's roll and slip roll right here. So I'm going to set this to a 1 beat. Kind of Daft Punky actually when I did that. That's doing exactly the same thing as I was doing over here. Yep.
If you're inside a loop and you press a hotkey, you jump out of it?
Good question. A loop in particular, yes. If you're in a roll, I don't think it automatically goes away. Let's say so I'm in a roll. Yeah, it just keeps going. That's a really neat trick. I could use that actually. But if you're in a loop, so this is just a 4-bar loop. You know, this is a good emergency 4-bar loop actually. And then I hit a hot cue to just jump. Yeah, it just jumps to wherever the hot cue, it kills the loop, and you're just back to the usual song. Yeah.
Do you normally say loops as hotkeys, or do you have hotkeys and then set the loop?
It's up to you. I've used loops to get me out of trouble. Those are obviously unplanned, so there's no way I could have saved it ahead of time. Right there is a saved loop. You know, it's in fact the very first hot cue that I've got. That's a really, really useful loop to have. You know, it's just one bass note. I can make sure that's the right pitch as anything else. Knowing that as soon as I release this loop, he actually changes key back to wherever he wants it to be. So it's really, really handy because I can use that to sort of like mix in songs that are actually not in the same key as Marshall Jefferson's song, and it still works. So you can save loops. There's actually this thing called active loop. What I'll do is that if you click it and it's red, when the song actually reaches that point in the song, the loop's automatically gonna kick in, all right? So I'm just gonna play this song. The loop isn't on yet, but as soon as it hits the loop, it's going to start. It just turned it on for me because my loop was active. In fact, it's not going to come out of it until I hit exit. There's other ways to set loops. I can just press the in and out buttons. That's the beginning and the end of the loop, right? So if I want to start, and I'm not usually precise enough to use the in and out buttons without turning on quantization, where it sort of like fixes that problem for me. Some DJs absolutely are precise enough where they can just hit those loops absolutely precisely, and the loops are very, very nicely exactly a bar, exactly 2 bars, exactly how long they want. That's a way to practice, I guess. If you're just like practicing blending, or you want to play around with these different effects while you're mixing at home, and you just want to have more time, you don't want to worry about like beat matching new music or anything, just loop the song. Just loop the whole song. Now we're getting into the radio-friendly Italo house songs that you probably already know. This is extremely irritating song, but you know, partly because people just kept playing it. So someone liked it, and it's back now. Yeah. Original version 999. Yeah, is it David Guetta? Yeah. I could not convince myself to buy it because I already had this version, and it was just like, do I really need 2 copies of this song? Yeah. But you know, I promise to play some Italo house. This is very much, the radio side of Italo house. Let's talk about flange effects. So a flange effect is actually a very old effect that came from recording studios, all the way back to the 60s. You hear it on like Beatles records occasionally. But it's just two copies of the same song playing together, slightly offset. And what happens is that, you got two waveforms that are basically doing the same things, but they're slightly offset. What happens? Yeah, you get phasing. So this is what the song normally sounds like. You hear that? It's only off by a little bit, but you get to control it. Flanging is creating this phase cancellation. And there's actually two effects that allow you to do that without having to literally play the same track on two decks. One is called flanger. It's a lot more, brash. It's really easy to hear it. There's also a phaser, which is even more, even harsher than that. Now, one thing I want you to be careful with both of these effects is that they really are removing things from the song. Even though it sounds like they've added this kind of like sweeping sound to it, it's actually removing frequencies from the song, and it can take a lot of energy out of the song if you use it too much. You hear the drums go in and come out? If you are playing on professional gear, sometimes you can choose which frequencies your effects are being applied to. So over here I have a low, mid, high, and I'm turning off the low because I don't want this effect to affect my drums. So the drums still coming through. If I turn it back on, you'll hear the drums disappear. And it kind of randomly disappears too, so it's not a great effect. So you want to be careful about effects that take things away from the original sound, how they are affecting the energy. The other one is trans, which is basically transform, right? And you can do that with the effects as well. That's a bit too short. Again, I'm taking things out. I'm just muting the sound every 1/4 of a beat.
Do like 1/2 for like half the bar, and then do 1/4.
Let's try it. Like that? Yeah. That sounded pretty good, actually.
What did you do to get that?
So in this case, this effect strip actually has a pad very much like this. So I can select half. I can just select 1/4. In fact, it's about half 1/4 here. So I'm just moving my finger from the half to the 1/4. So, I'm going to play a new track. Another song that got remade recently. So before the chorus comes in, I'm going to try to do that. I was doing a half beat transform effect, and then I shifted that to a 1/4 beat transform effect, so it became gated the way how you suggested. There's many other effects, but a lot of them are just versions of what I talked about. There are a lot of echoes with different kinds of filtering. A delay effect is basically the most basic echo effect. It's just copying the sound. It's just playing it, the same sound 1 beat later. A ping pong effect is probably the only actual stereo effect. It's an echo, but it's coming out of different speakers at different times. I don't know how many of you could hear that it was coming out of different speakers. And there's also things like you can make an artificial vinyl break. Let's try a half beat break. So it sounds like your turntable, you're breaking it. Now, the actual deck does that too, right? Right, I can do that. The only problem is that if I do that on the deck, the song actually stops. If I use it on the effects, it sounds like the song stopped, but the song's actually playing, so the tempo doesn't change. People can still dance to it. You can do stuff like that. All right, we're getting into very much more into sort of the Berlin territory here. Let's see. I've talked about most of the effects here. Yeah, play around with your effects. Some of you have a knob to select which channel the effect is being applied to. Some of you have to use the screen, or you have buttons to select it. There is a difference whether you're applying the effect to the crossfader or to the individual channel. All right. So again, this is kind of like the pre-fader, post-fader thing. If I select, right now I'm playing on channel 1, and I select echo on channel 1. Okay. And you can hear that, right? So I'm just turning down the volume on the main fader. The echo's on. But if I cut the crossfader, it just dies, right? Again, it's a post-fader, but pre-crossfader effect. However, I can also just select, I can say apply it to crossfader A instead. Much more techno-y here. So keep that in mind. I like to use crossfader A, crossfader B because it does the thing I expect it to. In your case, you might prefer to go to the individual channels. I want to apply this on channel 1, or I apply this on channel 2. I want to stress that in very recent equipment releases from Pioneer DJ, they're starting to move away from that. Because I don't know a single DJ who hasn't messed this up. They apply an effect, and and only after they've turned on the effect, they realize they put it on the wrong channel. I do it all the time when I'm using this effect strip. It is the number one failure case when I'm DJing with equipment like this, is I selected the wrong channel to put the effect on. That's a clue for you to make sure that you've always got the right channel selected. It might actually change quite a bit in the near future because Pioneer DJ is already releasing equipment where that's not the case. They have things like buttons, for instance, for you to select the channel that you want that actually glow, and it becomes like so much easier for you to actually see what you've got selected. We were talking about the pedals the other day with my echo effect. We were using the pedals. That's basically one giant channel select, and there's never any ambiguity of which channel you've got selected. I either turn the effect on the left or I turn the effect on the right. The reverb is basically a very atmospheric echo. So instead of hearing beats, you hear a tail, right? So I can turn it on. Right? That's a reverb. So a couple of different things you can do. You can use it to just add atmosphere. Okay. So if I wanted to, say, add a little bit more atmosphere to this, I can make sure I've got channel 2 selected and slowly bring up the reverb. I kind of don't like what it's doing in the bass frequencies. I'm going to turn off the bass. And now if I cut the fader, you can hear that. I like using reverb a lot at the end of my sets, but sometimes it's nice to do it during a transition as well. So you hear a little bit of the old song just sort of tailing away. So this is Detroit Techno, by the way. By Derek May, one of the original 3 Detroit friends that were making early Detroit techno in the 80s. So I'm going to turn up the reverb. So, just a little bit gentler. This is the kind of techno that they will play in Ibiza. It's a little bit more melodic. Some people call it actually melodic techno. So retroactively, you might call this melodic techno. Okay. Again, make sure that you turn your effects off once you're done. Otherwise, if I'm broadening a song, there'll be all this reverb that I apply on it because I forgot to turn off my effect. There is one final thing, which is called a release effect. I don't actually know how many of your controllers have this. It's kind of a very, very old feature, which is basically by turning on this effect, it's going to kill all of your other effects. It's going to take over. Say I've got all these effects at one, and then I hit a release effect. So it's kind of meant to be used at the end of transitions. I don't actually know any DJ who uses release effects that much, but it is a feature inside Rekordbox. So if you see a release effect, know that it's an effect that's meant to be used to turn off all other effects. It's meant to be used where you start turning on effects in the middle of a build, for instance. So I can turn on the reverb. And then you mix out of that song. And maybe you'll find a use for it, that hasn't occurred to me, and it will sound awesome. So go ahead and experiment.